Good evening, everyone. My name is James Hills. I am the host of a community platform called Java with Jimmy, and we are here this evening gathering to talk with our community and holding in a virtual space as we have done, unfortunately, a few times in the last 2 years. And during that 2 years, our community has dealt with a lot when it comes to grief and mourning. And it just is at a point by observation often of my social media timeline, communication and connection with community and family and friends that a lot of us are dealing with multiple deaths in short periods of time, whether it be from COVID, whether it be from violence, whether it be from domestic violence, whether it be from natural causes, whether it be from drunk driving, whether it be from suicide. We are dealing with a lot. And I wanted to bring a couple of folks together. I wanted to bring all of us together as a community. And so, what I will do is ask you to do me a favor and share this. It was put together at the very last minute today. And so we did not get word out, and I wasn't doing a Java with Jimmy flyer. And so we are doing as we used to do by word of mouth. And so if you would hit share and maybe tag people that you know we have a young man that's going to talk specifically with our young men. And my guest this evening, we're just going to have a real conversation about grief and mourning. And so I'm going to get ready to bring my guest in the room. I know one is in the background getting ready, so I'll kind of run. Oh, there they go. They're ready. So you all don't have to hear me. We were tentatively, and we may still be. Uncle JG is scheduled, or I talked with him about coming in at the end because as this is a heavy space, and as we do as Black and Brown folks, we do joke and we laugh in times of grief and mourning. We're going to talk about other things and other ways that we deal with that. So at this time, I'm going to bring my sister and brother in the room in the persons of Mo Gatson and also, I'll say Reverend Pastor Donald Osgood. And they're no stranger to the Java Cafe. Mo was with us just not even 2 weeks ago when we were talking and brought the community together to remember Deja, and Donald has been here as well. Do you try one more time or see if the mute button is on, Mo? Say something and see if we can hear you.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Yeah.
You
Can
can't
you
hear
hear
me.
me?
Hit the. You got headphones in the background somewhere that may have picked up. Well, she can't hear me, so that doesn't help. But we're working on tech. But we thought it was important to come together this evening to talk about grief and mourning. And so while Mo's working that out there, I'll text her and tell her what to do. Donald, if you could just and I'm going to do something. And I know for you and Mo will probably come back in. Put you on the spot. We are people of faith. It is statistically proven that, and this is no disrespect to any other belief system, but Christianity in the Black community is very popular. And so, and Donald, I know you're balanced, but I'm going to ask you just to say like 20 seconds, 30 seconds, however God gives it to you, just to maybe open us up in the word of prayer, and we'll go into the conversation.
Cool. Father in heaven, we first thank you for this even an opportunity to be present for our community, Lord. Thank you for James, Lord, Jimmy. Thank you for him today, even having this space, a much needed space for us, Lord. And as others would listen, pray that you would speak to us and through us today, myself and Masika and James, that we would be the voice of healing for our community. May we share real things tonight, and may we walk away lighter and more at peace than when we came tonight. We thank you in advance. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. I just text Mo and let her know that even if she comes on the phone, whatever, the point is the important thing is the message that you both have to share. And so, Donald, I'm going to ask you. You move in this space. You've worked a lot in trauma, and we understand that grief and mourning is a part of trauma. And so we're focusing on that tonight. If in the past 2 years, based on what you've observed and in your work and in your own personal experience, what's one word that you would use to describe grief in our community right now?
I would say pain. I would say pain.
And in the manner of give us the I mean, I have an idea, but give us the context exactly of why you say pain.
Um, now I just use my me personal, right? Because I don't want to speak for everyone in the community, even as I feel it a lot of times. But since COVID began, I lost some friends, family to COVID. I lost some friends, family to homicide. In the last 2 years, and you know, I think about it's a daily struggle. Some days you're happy, feeling joyous, and then other moments, you're just missing people that you're never going to see again. And the way COVID hit us was, people, our loved ones died by themselves, and so that's that pain. You can't fix it. You just kind of have to work through it.
So I want to ask you. I'm going to jump right in, and hopefully we can get Mo back. You talked about feeling it sometimes, and what I heard was what I often call the roller coaster. So let's jump right in. And one of the things that we did want to be intentional. It is it normal to feel the way often that some of us are feeling right now? Can we just say that it is that normal to feel what we're feeling in our bodies, in our minds? Is that normal, that roller coaster?
Yeah, yeah, that's very, very normal. Grief and loss. It's up and down. And I know there's a lot of different books written. But every person is different. Everyone's an individual, and some people deal with things differently. So it's again, I'm 53 years old. I lost friends in the 80s and 90s, right? And I won't even call them friends. I'm gonna call them my brothers and sisters that I lost back then. And I still have those moments where I'm sitting back reminiscing, thinking like, I'm still here and they're not. So it's natural. It's okay to feel like that. I would say don't let it keep you down, but do your best to fight through. And if you can't do it on your own, don't be ashamed to reach out for help. Don't be ashamed to ask somebody or tell somebody that you need some support or some help. Because that's where we get so depressed about a situation, and sometimes we feel like we can do it on our own, but it's okay to ask for help.
How do you, Donald? You mentioned what some people would automatically kind of use a term called survivor's remorse. And you mentioned a few moments ago that, a lot of people had to experience their loved ones dying by themselves. A lot of people, let's keep it 100, there was the conversation about had only, they got the vaccination. These are real factors that are contributing to our grief, our pain, and our mourning. And so, how do you yourself, sir? Because I heard a little bit of that. What is it that you would say to someone that's feeling like, it should have been me, and what if I did more? And again, there's varying reasons why people, have transitioned, and so in some of those cases, it is valid where some people have a feeling, well, had I or did this, and so how do you, if any point, deal with survivor's remorse? How do you deal?
For me, man, I pray a lot.
There she is.
If I didn't, and I just be honest, man, if I didn't have God in my life, you know, it's because it's many days, like recent days that, I feel like just giving up sometimes because it just gets heavy. just to be honest. And I
But you're
just,
a man. But you're a
hey,
man. What does that mean? That it feels heavy and you feel like giving up?
the myth. There's this myth that we Supermen. We always got to carry everything, make sure everybody's good, right? And some days I don't feel like making sure everybody's good because I'm not good, and you know I have to fight through that. I have to think about my kids, think about my wife, think about y'all, y'all are important to me too. So I think about the people who, wow, yeah, I think about the people who, if I wasn't here,
Yes, sir.
to count on me, it would crush me. Just thinking like, dang, I left them. So that's what keeps me moving, along with my praying.
Yes, sir. Mo, it's good to have you back. And I know often, and thank you. It's last minute and tech or whatever, but you're here. And if you were here a couple of weeks ago, as I was saying, and I reached out today, and we're just talking about like grief. And so, for those that don't know, can you introduce yourself? And in that, I asked Donald. I said, based on the past couple of years, all the reasons, every way that we are aware of people transitioning, how would you describe grief and mourning in our community by using one word?
Good evening, everybody. Some of you know me as Mo. Some of you know me as my government, but my preference is Mo. Um, but I work in the community a lot. I'm part of a lot of people know me from my daytime work. A lot of people know me from my community work, and a lot of people know me to show up in the community when there's times of need. But I love to show up in the community where there's times for celebration as well. But I would say, James, I can't really put one word on it. When I see it, I see. I could definitely say help comes to mind.
Help, help.
Help.
Got you. And one of the other things that I asked Donald was that, how do you how do you yourself, Mo, you move in this space? We're aware of things like clinical supervision and stuff, and sometimes that may or may not work. How do you help yourself or community when we talk about grieving, and especially this time, Mo, to where we can't do the usual go over the house and take a plate of food, and gather like we used to? How do you seek help?
I would say I definitely have a sisterhood that we killed Zoom, but I also not recommending, but I will say for our sake and for our mental health reasons, we did come together, but we made sure it was safe. We made sure that we opted out of, you know, doing the 7 day, can't go nowhere, can't do anything to actually do the meetup, right? And once we did that, we realized how much, physically seeing someone and actually laughing, you know, at the tables where we congregate, in kitchens, and having that, you need that. As much as people, I can stay in the house from Friday to Monday morning. I have
That's it.
done it before
And that's it.
and caught up on television, whatever it may be. But I'm going to say the moment we did that, the joy and the excitement to see my friends, to physically touch them and give them a hug, and to feel that energy was so needed. So needed.
In a time more where it and things hit, let's keep it 100, surges and things, we get precautions and we pull back and we do other things, knowing your pod, those you
Mm.
can be around, and vaccinate and everything that comes with that. And Donald, come on and chime back in here. What I heard from both of you so far was Donald was faith, and then also realizing, and it's funny because you answered that and said that in the midst of me challenging you as a man that you got to be hard and hold it down. But then you said it was okay to be vulnerable. So I heard faith, I heard vulnerability, and Mo, I heard from you community. And so, how do we do that? Those are healthy ways of dealing with grief and mourning. Um, is it really different in a pandemic? Is it different? Even you guys are service providers, so let's just name that it is different for us in our community. That's one of the reasons why we're here in this space tonight. So I'll move a little bit away from that. And then, Donald, I wanted to ask you, you started to talk a little bit about men, and we've talked before about mental health. Grieving and mourning is a part of mental health. How important is it? Mo talked about community. We often know that sisters, they get up, they do their thing, whatever. Brothers, we do, but it's and I see that our yard time is on along with Miss Ruthie Rollins. Good to see you guys in the room, Shakira and DL as well. um how important is it for brothers to have community?
Oh man, it's so important for us. Because it's kind of like what Mo just said. When you're in each other's presence, it's just something that
Mm.
clicks, right? But one thing that I did find during the pandemic and things is that with Zoom, a lot more brothers connected with Zoom. Whatever for whatever the reason is, Zoom just made it easier for us to get together and just to have a space where you can be vulnerable, right?
Right.
Share real issues that's going on in our lives. Cry. Because we were taught, men. Let's be honest. You a little kid, and you have to stop crying, get up. Boys don't cry, men don't cry. And so, all these many years for myself anyway, I didn't start crying till I was 28, man. You know what I'm saying? So I had losses, grandmother died, all these different folks, and I never cried. Because I thought it just was something we didn't do. And the moment I cried, my whole life changed. So, I encourage brothers to cry. There's a book, Cry Like a Man by this brother Jason Williams, and this book is so dope. I encourage brothers to read it. I encourage sisters to read it because it said a sister actually shared the book with me, and what it says in the book is for sisters. If you wanna understand your man or your son, read that book. Because it's just so deep, and crying and just putting your guard down, because we don't do that often, right? But you know put yourself in a position to heal, and that's what worked for me. And I know that a lot of the brothers that I'm in touch with over the many years now that I've been doing work with brothers and different groups, it's we just all grow together, and we're still close to this day.
I appreciate that. And it you talked about crying in a different way. Some men cry, and we're not saying that if you don't, it's something wrong. We're not definitely saying if you do, there's something wrong. There are, and to Naraki's point, there are different ways. I have learned that we shouldn't tell each other how to grieve because everyone grieves differently. Mo, I'm going to put that with you, because I love your, both of you are very frank, but let's talk about that. Let everybody grieves differently. And so
Yeah.
while we're holding this space that we're grieving, we're not saying that there's one particular way that you do it. If you don't do A, B, C, and D, you ain't grieved yet.
I would say definitely. I'm a firm believer in your voice, in your choice when it comes to grieving. It doesn't look the same. When I teach the workshops about trauma, I always say two things. I could be standing with a good friend of mine, and we can both see a traumatic event. We're both not going. It's not going to impact us the same way. So I can't expect grief to impact people the same way, and they're going to have the same reaction. And I think so many people love to judge people in the way they grieve, and that's not okay. People have their own way. And not only that, we all haven't been raised by the same person. So whoever is in your household and what grief looks like in the household, it is what you know. So if that is what you know, and that's how they dealt with it, that's how you're going to deal with it. It can be a generational thing. And people don't realize that that's something that they was taught. So you can't just walk in and be like, that's wrong. No, who are you to tell someone something is wrong? If a young person or an older person, whomever, choose to smoke marijuana or whatever it is they choose, I can't say that's wrong. I can't say that's right. But if that soothed you at that point, I who am I?
Let,
Because I don't know if that's what you was taught. I don't know if that keeps you sane for the moment to not do something, or to be like, this is what mellows me out and it keeps me content to maintain my feelings, or to maintain this space that I am in, or the space that my preference to be in at the moment. And some will say, well, that's for a little while. You're going to need some more in order to get back in that space. But who am I to say that's wrong? Who am I to say that's right? What I'm saying is, show me. I will do my best to show you other healthy ways that could be healthy to you. So let me not say unhealthy. Let me take that back. I want to show you some other healthy ways besides that. Can I add some tools into your
come,
toolbox or your backpack to help you find other coping skills to help you get along when that's not good enough?
Mo, thank you for your transparency because it's really real. And in this space, we call it self-medicating or whatever. But
Hmm.
we this past 2 years, the intensity, because we have to understand that a lot of times that the pain in which Donald referred to in the beginning is so hard. And again, let's be 100. And I'll say this: you don't have to, Mo. Mo's not out here advocating for substance use and stuff like that. So let's just keep that 100. Well, what she's saying is that we move in a non-judgmental zone. Donald, I'm going to give it back to you as a man of God. I know that you are very well balanced between the sort of realness of what Mo said, but then there is an aspect, and I know Mo and I have talked about this in the past, that if where should we, if it is there, and if there is, when is there a point? And I put a post up today. I said, if you know, I don't know if my mother's on. If a 50 pack used to last you 3-4 days, and you notice these past couple of months that you buying a 50 bag, I don't even know if they do them anymore with all this stuff. That it's going in a day and a half. Used to buy, I don't know, pint, half pint, and it would last you for 3 days or over the weekend. And now it's going in a day. Where's the balance of what Mo said, Donald, and where we as individuals, not in a judgmental place, but our first with ourselves, because we know that we smoking 3-5 blunts a day when it used to be 2. Where's the balance between what Mo said and where we should be concerned and adopt more of healthy ways in which Mo referred?
So, I want to say this first to that. I love working with Mo and my old team, which is still my team, right? Because when we're together and we're working with the community, we always let people do what's good for them, and we also make sure that those folks that might come in with the judgmental mindset, we don't check them hardcore, but we do say, hey, come over here for a second, because at the end of the day, it's really up to the individual, right? And I'm gonna be transparent today, for real, right? But before I was who I am today, with all the different lives lost of my brothers and sisters, right? I drank all the time, and it wasn't, people was always like, man, you got a drinking problem, right? And I was like, man, I don't got a drinking problem. And when I realized that I had a drinking problem, I was dying, you know, like real talk. I was dying because it was destroying my kidneys, You know, my liver was messed up. My breathing was like 40%. And when all those things came to light, it was like, now I got to make a decision. And I think in the midst of grieving, sometimes we don't realize that we're increasing what we're doing, right? But that's where it's good to have friends where we can hold one another accountable. Because I did have friends that was like, "Yo, D, you drinking too much," and sometimes I didn't want to hear it, and sometimes I did hear it. But when it counted, you know, they also supported me in my change. You know, and I think it's just being present for one another. I think as we're talking about community, you know, that's what's really missing. You know, the old school type community where we just always looked out for one another, no matter what. You know, where we felt safe with each other. So that would be my way of saying, you know, have people around you that you trust, and that's okay for them to say, hey, it's time to pull it together. You know, maybe not in the beginning, because like most said, you know, in that beginning of whatever the trauma is, right? It's, you know,
It's raw.
just true story. You know, it's therapeutic for me too tonight. I appreciate this, James. You know, I lost an uncle and an aunt to a murder suicide, right? While I was in the middle of doing this type of work, and it was amazing because I had some coworkers that understood. They gave me space, and then I had some folks that, you know, was dropping cliches on me in text calls, and I shut the world out. But for 40 days, I just shut the world out, and I dealt with that, you know. And when I was ready to come back, I came back. But I had friends, family that stuck with me through that process and always let me be me. You know, I think that's what we need in our community, a little bit more, some more compassion and some more empathy.
Donald, thank you, and thank you for the transparency as well. And it doesn't surprise me because it's just real, and that's who you are. Mo, I'm going to come back to you because again, both of you have the ability to strike balance, and so we talked a little bit before about like grace. There is that beginning period that both you and Donald referred that maybe not in that moment is not the time, and so where do you how do you handle and balance caring and giving space, but then also, like Donald said, being a truth teller? What how have you balanced that at times where you know if you don't say nothing it's going to go a particular way, but then you also don't want to piss them off, but you're understanding where they are. And so how have you dealt with that? Because some people in our community, they care and they come from a good place. And sometimes feelings are hurt. The ones that are hurting spew out and say something, whatever. And so that's an experience of our grief and mourning. So how do you handle it?
I think some people take things personal.
I only snickered like that because I know Mo, and again, Uncle JG may not be here, so we're going to try to have our own Black Joy. But if you know her, Shaquera, and others, when she said that like that, it was like that's Mo. Go ahead, man. Sorry.
When I say that, not to be rude or anything like that, but it's not about you at that moment. It's not about your feelings. It's not about, I'm not saying that you not to respect someone. I'm never saying be disrespected and just go with that. I'm never going to say that. I'm never going to say that. But what I'm going to say is I'm not taking it personal. Sometimes we have to take ourselves out of the equation in order to definitely be present. Let me say that one more time. Be present for the person that we're servicing, or for the person that we're helping, or for the person that we're listening to. Because sometimes all you need to do is listen, and you'll get all the information that's needed. And if you're a person that is a person that works around or know this person, you'll know when to talk and you'll know when not to talk. You know when to embrace. You know when to do touch control just to even help. You'll know these things. So I think if we take taking things personal out the equation, I think we will get somewhere as a community. everyone seems to take things personal, and everyone's going through something. I'm not saying one is better than the other. I would never say that. I'm not saying one should look at it this way, one shouldn't look at it this. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is everything is not personal, and you can't look at it everything personal. I think for some people, when I work with people, I watch how they move. I make sure I understand how they want to be treated. You could tell a person about how they want to be treated from their conversation, for like all the things they do in front of you. And I know in our community, trust is a big thing. So you're not just getting right to it and doing all these things and speculating on what people, or giving an analogy on what people think or what you think is best for them. People are the experts on themselves.
Agreed. Agreed. Donald, I'm going to ask you, or Mo, I'm actually going to come back to you, and we we were very intentional this evening to understand that there's trauma in which all three of us move and have been in that space, but we wanted to be intentional about just having a conversation about grief and mourning. But there are some things that cross between the two. And so either how you two do it, let's, or we can just talk about it. There are things like we know that we need to drink water. And I've been as blatant, and shout out to Courtney Gray and others. And I've in sessions where I've had to do what we call first aid containment or trauma containment.
But psychological first aid.
Psychological for It's been a while. Psychological first
PFA.
aid is, I used to tell people, you need to drink water because you need to pee. And I would keep it real like that, because am I lying? When we deal with Mo, Donald, when we are dealing with these stress and whatnot, what happens to our bodies? What do we do? What happens? Why do we need to pee?
For one, I don't want you to have no medical issues, so please pee. Please, everyone, use the bathroom. But
Yes.
when you drink water, it does help, like, things that move, energies and things around in your body. So you are absolutely right, James. You are
Yeah.
definitely,
Yeah.
it helps in that sense. You're definitely on the right target. And plain as day is basically how you should say it. So I respect you for saying it plain as day,
Yeah.
because some people love to use, well, these are the 5 steps and the 7 steps you need to take. So yeah, we know some of, in the moment, people don't have time for that. So
Right.
definitely drinking water is definitely big. And I'll say, definitely when you drink water, you do feel different. You do feel different. They say keep a glass by your bed at night. It's
I,
for a reason.
I got to
Yeah.
do better. I mean, I got to hear today because it's too late to drink coffee, and we're very intentional right now at this point, because they're with this. And again, this is what we do. One of our rituals, we do joke and we do laugh in times of grief and mourning. And so, Donald, I know you want to check in there because I may have been a little surprised. Rev, I'm sorry for using
Nah,
such
Donald is
vulgarity
cool.
with the good Reverend on this evening.
Yeah, I mean, y'all said it. The toxins, your body, when there's trauma, that fight or flight, different things
Yeah.
happen, and inside your body, all that stuff can affect you all kinds of ways, right? And so when we drink water, it just flushes all them toxins right up out of our body, because we need it out of our body so that we can feel healthy, because that also can affect the way you think, that depression and all those other things. All that's coming out when you flushing your body with that water, so I would recommend it always. And like Masika said, water even at night helps you release in the morning, like you need to get that stuff that just was sitting there. I'm drinking more water now. I didn't drink a lot of water before, but I drink
I'm
a lot of
trying, brother. I'm trying. We're going to get ready to. I said that I wouldn't hold these folks no longer than about 9:30, 9:40. Shout out to Uncle JG. I'm going to get him, and we'll have some Black Joy later about that. But I just enjoy the moment that I'm able to get him. But one of the other groups I want to speak to, Mo, and especially with you and Donald, and I'm going to ask you all to wrap up with this about what you all do for your self care. Um, as somebody that has advocated. I'm sure some folks in the room tonight find themselves as that point person for the family and whatnot. And so I want to talk a little bit about eating and sleeping, because even if you're not handling things for the family, trauma does mess with. We're in a pandemic where sleep has been off already. And then with this, and so along with drinking water, the other two things I was always taught is the importance of eating and sleeping. And so let me see, who am I going through eating and sleeping? Um, Mo, I know I know you're a connoisseur of good palatable pleasure. Let's put it that way. How important is it to eat along with drinking water? And then Donald, I'm going to talk to you about sleep.
Um, I would say it's definitely important. And you always, I mean, even if it's a snack, I know sometimes during, I'm going to say this pandemic, depression, all these factors that's in what's happening. Sometimes your appetite's not as big. Sometimes you forget to eat when you're moving and shaking. I mean, kids, kids don't have parks to be in. Kids don't have things to go to as much. There's so many restrictions around so many things. So even, snacking, have something for you, because like they say on the airplane, if you don't get oxygen yourself, you can't save nobody else. So you have to eat to save somebody.
Can you say that again though? Because I'll be honest, us caregivers, I see a couple in the room, we the first ones, and we don't practice that well. And so while we're talking grief and mourning, the community has been blessed with some people that move in this space. And so I want to make sure that we talk with them as well, because they're no good to anyone else if they don't do what?
Exactly. And I'm a firm believer in that. I don't care. And that's one thing I do. I will hold a snack. Someone will come in my office like, you got, yes, I do. I do. I definitely do.
Because we need to
And
function.
I have it in the car. Like, it's just one of those things that, like, sometimes, being on a trauma team, we show up on scenes. There's kids there. You know what I'm saying? And during that moment, I don't know what has happened. I don't know if you ate or if this traumatic event brought you from dinner. I don't know what has happened, but I definitely make sure to ask those questions. And I'm a mom, so I'm definitely asking those questions. Can't no child be around me without me asking the question, are you okay? Do you want something to eat? You want something to drink? I definitely got it.
And
I'm
we're gonna
definitely equipped.
and we're going to come back to that. Hold that part, because there's something in that I want to end with.
Okay.
Donald, sleep, and let's keep it 100. We talked a little bit about inhaling and sipping and whatnot, and I'll be very transparent. There have been times of trauma in my life where there was a sip or inhale for the purpose of being able to fall asleep, bro. And so sleep is important, and sometimes that plays into it. So if you could talk to sleep.
Yeah, it's funny you asked the person that don't sleep, but it's very important. And I only say that since I've been a little kid, man. I sleep on short hours, and I try to go to sleep, and I just don't. But what I would say, it's important to sleep. It's important to get rest, because that's what it is. It's important to get rest, along with what Masika said. You can't help someone if you're not at your top, at your top performance. So drinking water, flush the toxins, eating to make sure you have strength for that journey and that rest, so that when you're ready to go again, you can go. It's just very important. I encourage a lot of people to sleep, and during that time, Lisa texted me. During that, she saw nightmare symptoms.
Is this
She
Lisa
saw,
Cersei?
no, Lisa Flegel.
Oh, okay.
I wish she would put that in the chat too for the Java with Jimmy.
Okay.
But you know, I know when at the times when I was dealing with it, dealing with grief and things, I didn't want to sleep. I didn't want to go to sleep, but it was important for me to sleep so that I could be refreshed for the next day. Because the next day, I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, but I need to be prepared for it. And if I follow those 3 steps that you said, James, it would actually help me help somebody else in the process of the work that I do and just being a person in general.
Those are three essential things that we need. And I'll be very transparent in the helping field. I think we're sometimes uh, the worst offenders. And so that's why I know to bring it out and speak to it. And so, Mo, we're going to get ready to wrap up. But you had talked a little bit about being a mom and you check in and you call and whatnot. And so that's one of the things that we kind of talked about a little bit before we went live, before the internet, before, and I, again, we're skating on the cusp of, in the pandemic and before the internet and maybe not being able to gather. But again, um, the village, how important is the village in our communal grief and mourning?
I would say the village is very important because I think that's what I learned. That's how my son was raised. If there was no village, I'm not pretty sure he would be where he is today. And there's still a village that's alive. I think some people haven't had the pleasure of having a village. I
Right.
don't think some people know what the village is. My neighbor was my village, a part of my village. My neighbor beside my neighbor was a part of my village. So I'm not too sure if people even have that privilege to know what a village is and who to make a part of that. Now, I'm not saying everyone's privileged to be a part of your village because you got to know when to and when not to. And some that times, it's okay to say, yeah, that one's not going to work for me. But you do have the option of having a village and building it. When you build something together, it always stands stronger than separation.
I agree. I agree, and thank you for that because that though we may come together to support each other around this space, the building that comes out of it. Because when you're there for somebody in situations like this, there's a young woman that both of you know right now, that I'm still connected to. She in my inbox now. Did you eat today? Did you do this? And so the village is definitely important. Donald, I'll ask you as we get ready to wrap up. What do you do for self care, sir, to take care of yourself in this space? I'm maybe putting you on the spot a little bit, but what do you do for self care? Because I think that's one thing that we have to end with is the importance of real actionable. Like, what do we do to self care? And just like grieving, self care is different for everybody.
So, a couple, about 3, 4 things I do. One I love the most. Um, Two, I pray. That's without question. But I love chess. Chess. When I play chess, I'm just in another world. That's what I do. I play chess every day. I like music, so some good mellow music. Every now and then I like
What do
some
you call
upbeat.
give us an artist? What do you call mellow music? We're going to
Well,
dig a
I'm
little
I'm
bit.
talk I'm talking like Aunt Shema Moore. Andre. What's it on Andre Moore? I be messing these boys' names up, man. But they're two gospel brothers. And then also I like some hip hop gospel. Some Bizzo, Lecrae.
Okay.
Tasha Cobbs, stuff like that. You know what I mean?
Yes, sir. I'm gonna laugh
and
because
then
I know. Yes.
just movies. I'll binge watch some good movies. Just to really get myself in the right frame of mind. That's what I do for self care. I had to switch it up a little bit from what I used to do.
Yes, sir. Listen, it's real. I appreciate you, man. Mo, what do you do for self care?
Um, I got a couple of habits. one is one is shoes. I would have sneakers, whatever you may want to call it, running shoes, tennis shoes, whatever. I'm I'm definitely one of those girls, but I definitely would say I enjoy going. Like I have, good a good sisterhood. We enjoy traveling. We enjoy going out to eat, trying different restaurants. Definitely, enjoying each other's company and building, making sure everyone's okay, making sure nothing's needed because we're all good at something, right? And we use each other for what we're good at to make sure we're good. And when one is hurt, we're all hurt. And we're trying to figure out how to make it right. So when I say, and that's part of my self care, for just being with them, you know, and making sure that as a sisterhood, we're good.
I did that last part intentionally because I wanted you two to be reminded on a Sunday evening, though your willingness to come in and be here for community. I just wanted you to really be very active in your own minds to remember in real time just some notes of self care and intentionality about it. So, Mo, go get yourself a pair of shoes tomorrow. Um, D, I know you're going to go play chess. And I appreciate both of you and community. And there were a couple of times where we were intentional about laughing because it was just a conversation about grief and mourning. And one, to let you know, and we see one of y'all coworkers in the room, community, we needed to let you know, and Miss Ruthie as well, that you're
Miss
not the
Miss Ruthie.
only one. You are not the only
Yeah.
Hmm.
one that are dealing with this. We are dealing with it. I have had a couple of times recently where I just bawled. So the roller coaster we talked about earlier. So I want to make sure we recap what we talked about. Donald talked about he taps into faith as one of his outlets in self-care. He also talked about chess or gaming. Donald, Mo, I think we're a couple of difference in age. Donald, I just got a console that I got the original Pac-Man, the
What?
original Miss Pac-Man, Centipede, Ash, Atari 2600, bruh. Like Mo, I don't know if you know about that back in the day. You know, it's a couple of years difference. And so, you talked about chess and gaming. You also talked about being transparent and real. And you did say that you cry. And old folks used to say crying is good for the soul or washes the soul or something like that. And so we heard that from you, Mo. If I remember right, we heard community, we heard sisterhood, we heard, and you both agreed the importance of eating, and we also heard don't be judgmental if people are dealing or grieving
Right.
in their way, and it may, as Donald, you said, it may involve substances, packs. Don't be judgmental. The other piece that I heard from you was, and we talked about self care. So Mo said to go out, y'all, and get y'all all new pair of shoes and sneakers. Mom said, I'm messing. And then,
Can I say something,
of
James?
course,
I definitely want to say, even when trying to help someone get rid of something, you just have to be mindful to replace it with something. You can't take something away without replacing it with something. So, as much as some people are like, well, this ain't right and that ain't right, be willing to have something to replace what you're asking to subtract from what they
Right.
and it may be your
please.
presence. It may be your presence, a
Mhm.
phone call, a
It
text,
could
or
be.
go out.
Just put some stuff in their backpack. Don't put one thing in it. Put some stuff in it. So when one thing gonna work, you can move to the next.
Tools,
Hmm.
tools, and skill sets. Donald, you was going to say something.
No, I was just agreeing with Masika because that's so important. Is to, you know, we've been in the work before the direct trauma work. We were also in the street work, and always talking to the young brothers and sisters about changing, but we didn't have anything for them when they did the change. Right, put down the weapon, but I don't have anything to replace that with for them. So I'm doing them a disservice. So
Donald, don't, because this session on grieving and mourning could go a
I
very
got you.
different way.
Well,
And I'm going to
all
be
of it's the same, my brother.
yes,
Just
sir.
to be honest with you, it's
It is.
all the
It
same.
is. It is.
You
It
know,
is. Because my grief
because
and my mourning. Mm,
grieving and mourning, if we don't do it properly, turns into other things.
it sure does.
And I
And
think that's probably what our community needs to hear the most. Right? It's okay to express yourself, but we got to do it right. Be
Donald,
angry, don't hurt nobody. That's all.
that is, and that's to the word, be angry and sin not. I'll say that I thank y'all for this because y'all know my progress. I'll be honest, and I tell people all the time, and I'm doing better. My grief comes out in either service or attack, and I've been pretty good lately. I ain't attacked. I ain't cussed nobody out lately. I've been okay. And so in all seriousness, I thank both of you. I see some folks in the room that move in this space and have been directly impacted by a lot of the light. And it's something I totally forgot to do, everyone. And we'll do it maybe at another point. But I had at one point wanted to tell people to type the name of their loved ones in the comments. So real quick, if you two have 2 minutes, if you're still tuned in and if you've lost a loved one, please type their name in the comments and we're going to put it there as sort of a virtual way. We used to say is say their name. And that's associated with violence a lot. But no matter how folks have transitioned, their name still needs to live on. And so if you don't mind, type the names in there as we get ready to wrap up. I appreciate all of you, both of you that tuned in this evening, that helped out this evening, at last minute's notice. This is what community is about, and this is what we do. So thank you both for that. I know you both have families, and so I can stick around for a few minutes. And if folks want to type the names of loved ones, but we just thought it was important to have this space this evening just for a conversation and to someone who we all respect in this space, the great chaplain Tina Sherry, challenged me to make this a more consistent thing. And so we're going to figure that out with the help of folks like Donald and Mo and others. And so we see names here, and we're going to start putting them. David William Hart, who I knew, Squeak, the Shaquir is saying, Jack, Nikki, Latoya Howard, Dave and Rob, and also Mo and Donald. This is where I'm probably going to need y'all because I'm doing good, but it's seeping. Tim Mabry and Ralph Dees, rest in heavenly peace. Martin and Karif, Tweet Colin, Mick, Ryan, Greg, Paul, Jay. Ella minus, Tawanda minus, Linda minus, Kathy minus, Deja Jenkins minus, Carolyn Weeks. Thank all of you that have listed names and your transparency to share the names and honor your loved ones. One of the other things, and I'll put this on my information page later, when I was talking about Tina Sherry, who would challenge me, they're one of the rituals that the Peace Institute does, and it started me on a ridiculous. I bawled something terrible. Poor Tina, I felt bad for her. There's this concept called peace play, and you basically take a box of sand and they have, I mean, when I say figurines and buildings and trees and churches, and they basically, you make your world. If I'm right, or if I miss anything, Mo and Donald tell me, but you basically construct your own peaceful place. What does it look like? Did I miss anything, both of y'all, with peace play?
Nah, you got it. It's the sand, use the different figures, and it's like you're building a world. And usually it's, you know, a few people doing it together, and y'all are kind of sharing the world. That's what the sand represents. And then whatever piece calls to you, put it in, and it kind of tells a story, of maybe what you're dealing with that day. But it's so therapeutic, you know. I
Oof.
remember the first time I did it for myself, James. I was at a meeting before I ever worked at the Peace Institute, and I was like, I didn't come here for that because I wasn't trying to think about nothing. I was just there to,
Bro,
you know,
Tina set me up. Tina set me up bad. It was, I mean, you see the color of your name there, Donald Osgood? I
yeah,
was that color. I couldn't talk. She was like, well, explain to me what the world looks like. I said two words and poof. So I mean, it is something that and we'll get that, we'll make sure we share the information. And I might even one day go live and peace play, Jesus. Y'all
that
pray.
would be cool. You know too
Or did you?
about that peace play, James. Tina, when she experienced it, You know, that peace play is what they do in the other communities regular,
Yep.
and it costs a lot of money. You know, I'm talking a lot of money.
Okay.
So we would never be able to do it. So we definitely owe Tina, you know, some kudos, accolades, and all of that
Sir.
for bringing it to our community, because it's a tool to have in your toolbox to really deal with grief and loss on another level.
I appreciate it, man. And Mo, thank you for mentioning that. Again, both of you, I thank you. We shared some information. We had a real conversation. Don't forget to drink water, do your best to eat, do your best to sleep. Don't judge people in their grieving process. Surround yourself with people that you trust and build a circle and a village that can check in on you, that can hold you accountable, but that can also support you. Remember self care, that you're no good to anyone else unless you take care of yourself. And look more into, and we'll get it on either the website or their pages or Java with Jimmy, or just Google the Louis D. Brown Peace Institute and look into peace play. And that may be one of the things that different groups you all can get to. It's some work, but it's so beneficial. And
It
so
is.
thank both of you. And to everybody from the community that tuned in this evening, we hope that this was helpful. Tag and share it with someone that you know needs to hear it. And we will be doing something like this more proactively and not, to be very transparent, reactionary. And so, Mo,
James,
yes, sir.
could I? Because as you were just talking, there's something that I did want to say, and it slipped my mind to you
Go
just
ahead,
say.
sir.
When you think, when somebody, you know that old saying, you ran across my mind today.
Cross my
Make
mind. Yep.
make that phone call. You
That's
know
right.
that when somebody crosses your mind, you know, just call them and say, hey, what's up? You know, you can send them a text, but a phone call, whatever it is, when they run across your mind, just reach out to them, because I think, you know, just spiritually, sometimes that's God's way of saying they need you right now, whether they're gonna say it or not. But when they run across your mind, say, hey, I thought about you today. How you doing?
And you don't know what that 15-second text or 2-minute phone call can do in the midst of what people are doing. So yeah, all right. I feel something. So with that being said, I'm getting ready to get off of here, Jesus, because y'all got something burning. All right. Love both of y'all. Here
Love you
for
too,
you.
bro.
And
Love you, Mo.
Mo, you got anything to say before we go? I know you probably got to go get little man.
No, just blessed to be in this space
Yes, ma'am.
and to definitely hold this for the community and definitely get some information up. I know
Yes,
you will follow
yes,
up.
ma'am.
I
Yes, ma'am.
just don't want to leave no stones unturned that someone might need a conversation. And we opened up Pandora's box and we not giving nobody no tools to put in it.
Cool.
So
Yeah.
to
We will
close.
put one number here right now. Go ahead and keep talking for a couple of seconds because you know I do this in real time.
Yeah,
Um,
I just want to just make sure and just I know a lot of friends seem strong, and with this pandemic, depression looks can look like me and still
there's
be walking, talking, working, doing all the above.
someone brought up the fact that the young lady, as we know, we didn't mention a lot of names this evening, but there was a situation where a high profile young lady talked about depression and committed suicide. And there's no, like, not nobody, but the term that's coming out of it is high functioning
Mhm.
depression.
Mhm.
And people are walking around unaware
Mhm.
themselves. And then those
Mhm.
that are aware themselves, they're hiding it. And so
Mhm.
we definitely going. I'm just trying to get that resource up here. What Mo? Just tell me, please, and I'll put it in. What's the number to? 311 is a resource, and you can ask to be connected. We talk to grief and trauma, but if you call 311 and ask for trauma services, they
Donna, what's the number?
617
617-431
431.
0125.
This is the number. If you are feeling anything, if you need services, it is set up. This is the number that's on the trauma pamphlet. However, if you call that number and say, hey, I am just dealing with grief and mourning, that is a part
Yes.
of trauma, they will connect you with services. This hour, if I'm right, This line is manned 24/7, Mo. It is
Yes.
manned 24 hours, 7 days a week. So if at any point, take that number and reach out. We'll put other information up on the page and website. But Mo, thank you for that, because we want to make sure that people have a resource to tap into if they need to. But we really wanted to just, again, have this convo about grief and mourning. And from the comments and things I'm seeing that folks did, it was a space that folks could feel free to talk about and hear us talk about grief and trauma. So I appreciate both of you. It's 10:01. I said 9:40. Y'all have children and families. Molden already let me know that she's leaving. So I'm just messing with her. But I appreciate both of y'all. I don't want to end it till Mo comes back, so she don't think we just, Mo, you there?
Yeah, we could take a second, man. Just
Talk about Black Joy. We got a big old black square in the middle of the thing. Jesus, no, I'm messing.
Yeah, I mean it's I'm renaming Black History Month to Black History 365.
24/7.
You know what I'm saying? Because that's another subject
Don't get me
for
started.
another
You almost
time.
did almost once, and
Yeah,
I'm trying to behave. I'm doing real good these days. I don't attack no more. There she go. All right, I don't attack as much anymore. I just serve. So, bro, thank you for your service. Mo, thank you.
appreciate you,
Those of
brother.
you, take a screenshot of this number, and this is what the number you can call to get services. Love you, bro.
Love you too, bro.
Appreciate
Peace.
you, man. Yes, sir. That was our good brother Donald Osgood, and also Mo Gatson, who came in and yo, Jay, I fluctuated Jay in yard time, bro. Listen, we old, but appreciate you all being here. Self disassociation disorder is highly connected to trauma. Shaquira, we'll be reaching out and talking with you soon. Okay. Donald, thank you for this number. And everyone have a good evening. Get some rest. Drink a glass of water before you go to bed. Drink a glass of water when you get up tomorrow. And we'll see you tomorrow at 9 a.m. Have a good evening, everyone. Thank you.